Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Supporting or reporting on Tottenham Hotspur is meant to be full of drama, of highs and lows, and anything can happen. That's the Tottenham Hotspur way, who knows what's going to come next. I think the saddest thing for me right now about Tottenham Hotspur is they're kind of boringly predictable. We kind of know what's going to happen in pretty much every match. There's a real pattern to what's going on right now. It's starting brightly, a little bit of promise, very likely scoring a goal, lulling you into that belief that all is well, and then just slowly you watch the team start to sit back, lose control of the game, concede a goal, maybe concede another goal, and then have to fight and react and suddenly up their effort levels incredibly towards the end of the match, but not quite make it. It's almost like a broken record, which I probably sound like, just something stuck on a loop, and that seems to be Tottenham right now. I'm going to reel off some statistics to you, which I just, I didn't actually see them at the game. I think they flashed up on telly while I was at the stadium, and I came back and I saw them, and they're so ridiculous that they have to be said. Sublime to the ridiculous. So, Tottenham have scored first in 19 matches this season. They've actually taken the lead 22 times out of the 31 games. Some people might think, how can you score first and take the lead? Obviously, you can go behind, come back and take the lead. So, technically taken the lead 22 times in their 31 matches, which is ridiculous. And it's the second best record in that, if you want to call that an amazing thing. The second best of that, I think it's Man City have done it more. They've technically, they've been leading at half time 16 times in the Premier League this season. Again, second in the league for that stat. That's the sublime. The ridiculous is what happens next. So they've failed to win after leading at half time 7 times, which is the worst record in the Premier League, utterly worst. No one else has thrown away that many half-time leads. I've got them all written down so I get it exactly right. So they've dropped 18 points in total now from leading positions, which is 19th in the league for that. They've conceded 9 goals in the last 10 minutes, also 19th in the league, that places them. And they've dropped 11 points from goals conceded in the last 10 minutes, again 19th in the league. So in going forward and taking a grip on the start of a game, they are second placed in the league. In terms of everything that comes afterwards, 19th, or in one aspect, rock bottom. It's just such a weird way of playing football. It's so psychological, it's untrue. This is why, I think I may have said this in the last video, how, I think I did, about how Pochettino didn't believe in psychology and stuff like that, and Mourinho, there doesn't seem to be any kind of discussion that he uses psychologists. It might be a good question to ask, but there surely is a mental aspect to it. I think there's also a fitness aspect, which I'm going to come to a little bit later. I'm going to kind of talk about the Man United game briefly. I know I always say briefly and end up going on ages because there's little things and facets of it I want to talk about. But, I do think fitness plays a part, and we are going to come to that as well. But what I think I found most frustrating, other than the performance, especially second half performance on Sunday, was the fact that we know stuff needs to be fixed at Tottenham. We know stuff needs to be fixed within the team. But Mourinho won't tell us how it can be done or what he plans to do about it, which is, yes, I'm sure his supporters will say, why should he tell you? You're just journalists, what do you know? All of this sort of stuff. But the problem is if you continue to swerve the questions, he was asked, again at the weekend, kind of how do you fix it? And he was told he wasn't going to give an answer. He said, that's for me to kind of not to talk to the public. And I don't know. It says to me, if you keep saying stuff like that, if you keep saying that's not for you to know, it's almost like, that expression when people say, well, wouldn't you like to know? You know that when people say that, the majority of the time, they don't know. They don't have the answer. They're fobbing you off and just trying to deflect you. I think the concern would be either A, Mourinho doesn't genuinely know how to fix this through coaching, and if not, that means that his answer is to spend a lot of money, which we know he's done in the past at many other clubs. And I kind of felt Spurs was his big challenge to be able to prove what he did at Porto. And some people say at Inter he didn't spend too much money as well, that you can actually just coach the players you've got. And, you know, when he came in at Spurs first off, and again after the last summer window, he said what an incredible group of players he was and how they didn't really need much at all to become, you know, real contenders. So it kind of feels like when he's coming out with that sort of stuff and he's deliberately having a little barbed comments about people, that it kind of feels like maybe he doesn't trust that he can coach stuff. And look, I agree. I can already hear the Mourinho fans clamouring and banging on my door, raising their, you know, flaming torches to come and get me. And I do totally agree that the players aren't blameless in this at all. You know, I do think there's a lot of silly mistakes being made. But I don't think his team selection helped him. You know, I don't think at all. I mean, you know, it was very frustrating. I think the problem is, and I wrote about this in one of my pieces, and someone was like, "Oh, he's got under your skin" and all this sort of stuff. Not at all. I really want to make this clear about Mourinho, because this is what some of the Mourinho supporters say, that I can't stand Mourinho and I want him out. It's actually far from the truth. I've found, I think I might have said this in the last video, I've found Mourinho fascinating as a journalist to cover. I think he's a really interesting guy. Always really enjoyed interviewing Pochettino and asking questions and stuff. And I find with Mourinho, you know, an even more experienced manager, when you get the question right and you get him in the right mood and all that, he can give really fascinating, insightful answers. So, no, not at all. As I said, I think maybe in the last video, my preference would be that everything works out brilliantly. If that's under Mourinho, fantastic. I just want the best for Tottenham Hotspur, because it's more fun to write about a team that's doing well than it is that's one that's struggling. But I just think what I find frustrating about at the weekend is that he kind of chastised the journalists. We got told off for writing about the Toby Alderweireld situation, saying, well, you know, he did say he wasn't in training on the Friday and the Saturday. Sorry, on the Thursday and the Friday. Yet the club released photos of him training on the Thursday and the Friday. And then his answer when asked to clarify was that, oh, I don't have to clarify. You've done all your talking. I'm not going to play your game. And it was a bit like, yeah, kind of going back to the, wouldn't you like to know thing. And it kind of felt like that again. So, yeah, that's not, I'm not taking any of us to take that as a personal affront or anything like that. And he hasn't got under our skin. But I just think it's a little bit cheeky to not answer questions, and then we kind of got told off for not asking a question, which was a weird one, to be honest. I'm going to come into a little bit more detail later, but very quickly it was, he wanted us to ask him about Solskjaer's comments about Son, which were very weird. But we didn't see those, because the problem is, obviously, those comments apparently were said to the TV, but us in the press conference, we're inside the stadium, so we don't see those. So the bulk of people on that press conference call would not be aware of the things he wants us to ask him about. But I just thought it was a little bit cheeky. It's like, well, you'll choose to not answer certain questions, but then you're going to have a big old moan up that he wasn't asked the question he wanted to answer. But yeah, so no, it's not getting under my skin. I just find it a little bit unusual. It's a strange way of kind of dealing with stuff. It almost feels like deflection away from performance, and almost creating like a, look at me, and then running out of the room quickly. Look at this, look at him, woo. You know, it just, that's the kind of thing about Mourinho. Like I say, I find him fascinating as a manager, but I think sometimes the sideshow stuff, I think it really detracts from what clearly is one of the most, if not the most successful manager in the history of football. So yeah, no, I've had some interesting moments with the Mourinho followers this week. I find that they're kind of divided into two camps. I spoke last week, I think, about the three types of Spurs supporter. I think there's two kinds of Mourinho supporters as well. In case this is the first time you're watching this and not aware of this, Mourinho has this big old following, almost like a cult following, of people, a bit like Ronaldo, who will follow Ronaldo club to club. Mourinho's followers follow him from club to club. So when he was at Chelsea, they were Chelsea fans, and Mourinho fans. When they were Man United, they were United fans, and so on. And now they've come to Tottenham. But I find them really interesting as well, because, like I said, I think there's two distinct camps. There's the ones who are really willing to debate stuff, discuss stuff, talk about Mourinho, see where perhaps he's done stuff not quite right, but obviously push views on his experience, stuff like that. And they're really interesting to deal with, because for me, that's a fascinating facet of fandom. Of course, there's a lot of F's there, loads of alliteration going on. Fascinating facet of fandom. In that you can follow one person. That for me is amazing, because it's so alien, a kind of an idea for a UK audience, although I think around the world it's more of a thing. But yeah, but then there's this other camp, who are the ones that are quite... Well, they certainly go after me, which, you know, if I write anything that's got an edge to it, a critical edge, they will come out and say, oh my God, there's an agenda, there's a plan. What did I do the other day? Oh yeah, I noticed that people were saying that they weren't going to, and again, it's another thing we'll come to later. I noticed they were saying that they weren't going to buy cup final tickets. If you've missed it completely, Spurs have got 2,000 cup final tickets for the Carabao Cup, which season ticket holders can apply for. But I noticed a lot of people were saying, I'm not going to even bother, which shocked me. For me, only my personal view, however bad it is, it's so rare that Spurs get to a cup final, you know, especially a domestic cup final. I know we had a Champions League final a couple of years back, but it's such a rare occurrence. For me, I was very surprised that any fan would not want to be there for just in case. Yeah, it's going to be an incredibly tough match, but wow. You know, if Spurs did manage to do that and won a trophy, it'd be incredible. So I was quite surprised to see a lot of people were saying the opposite, and that they were just so worn down they didn't want to do it. So I did a survey, and just to try and gauge where people's heads were at, and I just said, you know, will or would you, if you're in the position to, or will you apply for a cup final ticket, or will you not? Oh my goodness, these other half, or the other portion of Mourinho followers that are very, very quiet, will not see any other point of view other than their own. Absolutely were going at it. I got told that was disgraceful, and that was me trying to force Mourinho out of the club. It was all part of my plan and agenda to upset the fan base and turn them all against him. Oh, I had some very strange comments. And the timing of it was absolutely incredible. I was like, well, no, it's the day the tickets have gone on sale and everyone's talking about it. But yeah, I find that very odd, and I must admit, you know, as I've said before, if you're going to be weird and maybe slightly aggressive, on the mute list you go, so I don't know you actually exist anymore. I don't like that. You know from my videos, I'm someone that I always like to see all sides, I like to hear all sides, which gets me... I get it from... who do I get it from? I get it from the people that absolutely vehemently want ENIC and the owners out. If I stick up for stuff they've done, or say, you know, what amazing things they've done with the stadium training ground, I'm an official mouthpiece for the club. I can tell you one thing: say the word mouthpiece, you're on the mute list, and you probably wonder why I never respond to you again. That I've been told I get paid by the club. That was another one. I can promise you, if I got paid by the club on top of my salary that I get on my normal job, maybe I'd actually have some money. That'd be awesome. But no. Anyone that knows my stuff, anyone that's watched these videos and knows my writing, I praise all sides, I criticise all sides. Everyone gets it on kind of both ways. No, I'm not. I'm not one for throwing myself into camps and only seeing one point of view about something, because, oh my God, this sounds so old man and mantra-y, but I think that's kind of a problem in the world out there. I think too many people only will see one set viewpoint, and I think that causes a lot of problems in the world. So maybe that influences the way I do stuff. But I think hopefully purely it's just because journalists are meant to be objective and look at the whole picture and the context. Wow, went off on a weird sideways rant there, so I apologise for that. Back to Mourinho and the game and everything. And I think one thing that Mourinho does believe, that I do think is a fair comment, I know this from the people around him, that he feels that he gets criticised for things, saying things that other managers say quite a lot, and there's no fuss about it. And I do think that's a really fair comment. I completely agree with that. If Mourinho say, and I'm just as guilty of this, but then for me, it's probably slightly different because I only cover Spurs, that's my team, but perhaps say Mourinho criticises his players, that's a big deal and he gets asked about it. But maybe another manager criticises his players. I was shown some instances of Poch doing it in the past as well, and maybe it's not such a big deal. Obviously, Mourinho's, the showbiz element that comes with him, the box office person that he is, everything does become elevated. Of course it does. And I do agree with that. I do feel that sometimes he gets a kicking for stuff that maybe is just what most people say. I do agree with that completely. But it doesn't mean it's always right. But I just want to say that as well. I mean, it's just really difficult at the moment right now. So I'm trying to look for really positive things. And I think probably the positive to latch onto is that there's attacking quality there. It's there. Like I say, you don't take the lead 22 times in 31 matches if you're a rubbish team. You don't. For me, I'm going to jump ahead now because I was going to talk about defence later, but I'll bring it up a little bit now because for me, I think you just go for it. I think you do. I think Mourinho's in a bit. If he's not happy with his defenders or he's not happy with the squad in certain aspects, play to its strengths right now and fix it in the summer. Because Spurs can score goals. They've got players that can score goals. You know, Bale I'm going to talk about a little bit towards the end. They've got enough players that can do it. And I just feel like we're at this point now. Yeah, I kind of maybe think, yes, the Man City game is the one where you've just got to try and shut up shop. I think for that one, every other game, and I'd include Everton and Southampton coming up in the next week or so, just go for it. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy the end of the season. If they're going to win games 5-4, if they're going to go down in a ridiculous thriller of a game, just have a go. Go down fighting. I think that's my thing, Whereas I think if Spurs are just going to kind of stutter and stumble in his last few games and not get top 6, top 4, if they've got a slim chance of top 4 still, then it just won't have been worth it. It won't have been worth trying to grind out stuff. I don't know. I just want to enjoy football again. And I think that's been a big thing that this has been an odd season for. I don't think you can say it's been a terrible season entirely for that. I think there's some really entertaining games when Spurs were going for the throat earlier in the season. Old Trafford performance, the one at Southampton as well, and some of the European days. You don't score the amount of goals they've scored this season by not having that ability and putting on a little bit of a show. But I just feel that they just sit back so naturally. And yes, I think the players are naturally doing that as well. But at some point, well, there's blame on both sides for me, massively. And I think what's possibly more worrying for me is that he was asked about Spurs being a soft touch. Apparently the pundits were talking about it in the Sky commentary or the punditry. And he did another one of his, that's not for me to say. It's almost like wink, wink, God, it's not winking there. It's more like I've got something going wrong in my eye. It was almost like, I'm not going to answer, but, my answer is yes, I agree with you. But I'd kind of argue the case that, and I hate the term Spursy with an utter passion, I'd say Spurs are more Spursy, if that's an expression, under Mourinho than they have been for years. I'd actually say under Poch, yes, they failed in the big matches, but I actually think they were quite consistent in grinding out the run-of-the-mill games and actually, some of the, I say big games, not the big, obviously Champions League final that they choked on the day and in semi-finals, but I'd actually say some of the performances when they were taking on the big boys at, whether it was White Hart Lane or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, sometimes going away as well, I actually felt they were less Spursy. And I don't know about you, but there was certain in prime Poch years, you didn't feel Spurs were going to concede late goals. He kind of really erased that as a thing. So I would say actually Spurs are more Spursy under Mourinho, which was totally not meant to happen. That was meant to be for Levy. That was meant to be the next step. He was going to shed that tag. That was going to be destroyed. So yeah, I find that a little slightly weird one. And I think the saddest thing for me was at the end of the game, I got back home, drove back home from the stadium, and I saw the Son interview. Oh my goodness. If the game wasn't enough to depress you, watching Son after the game, oh my God, honestly, as someone that's been fortunate enough to interview Son on a number of occasions and can verify that what you see is what you get with Sonny, the happiest, most infectiously bubbly person you can possibly come across, the nicest guy. oh my God, they broke Sonny. It's like South Park, they killed Kenny. It feels like the same. It was the most uncomfortable, probably, interview I've ever seen for a Tottenham player. I know the chap who did the interview, and he's a brilliant in-house media guy, very experienced guy. And he was just, he even admitted it to Sonny. He said, I've never seen you like this in the 6 years I've interviewed you. You're so low. And he looked at the start, and there was another point, he looked like he might even cry during it, Sonny. I think there's probably a combination of things. I think it's the performance from the team. I think it's the realisation that, with 6 points to the top four, it's and only 7 games left? Is it 8 games? 7 games left. It's getting more and more difficult. And obviously, he wants to play Champions League football next season. I think there was an element of that. I think there was an element of his involvement in the disallowed goal that was controversial. I think perhaps he saw some of the just abysmal, terrible stuff that came on social media, which we'll come to in a minute, and probably if he'd heard Solskjaer's comments as well. So there are a lot of contributing factors, but my God, it was disappointing and distressing to watch Sonny like that. It's like, of all the people, it was like seeing someone kicking a puppy, It was just, it was rubbish. Just very briefly touching on the disallowed goal, I felt, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I think it was a foul. I think, for me, McTominay was not shielding himself or the ball in so much as he flicked. For me, his hand flicked out. And as soon as the hand flicked out, that became a motion of a kind of, a flicking out. That, for me, was the foul element. I think if he kept a straight arm and was doing that behind him, I think that would be different. But the fact that his wrist flicked and the hand went out, I think that changed it into a thing. What I would say, I would agree that it probably wasn't the required contact to absolutely lay Sonny out and keep him out for that long. I thought that there was a little bit of gamesmanship in there, which, to be fair, was something that everyone's called on Spurs to be better at, and even Pochettino used to want that. It certainly VAR, had he just gone like that and just gone out and stood up and done it, who knows, VAR might not have been consulted or looked at it properly, and Chris Kavanagh, the referee, might not have gone over his pitch-side monitor. So I get it, but I do feel it was a foul. I do. And I'm sure there's lots of Man U fans that are very upset and would think otherwise. But the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer comments, although I said it was unfair in a way that Mourinho wanted us to ask that question, my goodness, when I saw the comments, they're so weird. They were really, really odd. I remember when he said this about Lamela, when Lamela, Martial got sent off which was an overreaction at Old Trafford. And he said a weird thing then about, if that was my son, I'd starve him for a week or something. And then he said it again after this one about, something about his son and wouldn't get any food for weeks or something. It was weird. I can only presume, my only thought is maybe it's a Norwegian expression that's used there and doesn't translate well into English. I'd say Mourinho was right in calling it out as weird, but I did think Mourinho went slightly overboard about it and went into too much of, I would never, son's father, he would never starve him. It's like, I think you're probably going too much to an extreme. And perhaps, like I said, there's a little bit of a deflection element of that. It's like, don't look at me in the performance, look at what the bad man said. But it was weird. And I think for me, it's probably the most frustrating thing about anything that happened with Son. He scored a lovely goal. It was a really nice composed finish. Obviously, another assist for Lucas, which was great. But I think it's just so ridiculous was the racist abuse he got after the game. And I've seen a lot of the screenshots. Obviously, there's Man U fans, seen fans from other clubs as well. And I'd say, I say that it's Man U fans, but I'm sure 99.9% of Man U fans would be utterly disgusted. And I certainly saw Man U fans calling out those people. I don't want to go into it too much because I said about it with Davinson Sanchez last week. Was it last week or the week before? I made my kind of feelings very clear on how just unbelievably sad and predictable social media in that aspect has become, giving people a vehicle to kind of say stuff that they just really want to say, regardless of whether it's about football. It's very unpleasant. But I think we're now getting to a stage where it's happening so frequently and it's being flagged up and made so high profile, and you're seeing clubs boycotting Twitter. I think there's going to be more of that. And I think they're going to boycott social media to such a degree that I think someone else will get in there. And I think someone else will create a platform where there are consequences for doing things that you'd never do in real life to people. I think there'll be accountability. And I think while it may be some people will see it as draconian, I think you'll have a system where you have to essentially properly register and be able to be identified for using that. And I think those big companies, football clubs, whatever you call it, organisations will gravitate towards the new kind of social media just to stop that. And let's be honest, the fans will probably follow because they'll want to be involved and they'll want to see what they're putting out. And I think Twitter and other social media platforms, they've got to fix it because it's horrible. It's such a disgusting element of the game. It's like we used to have hooliganism, which was something that everyone was disgusted by, and I'd say now racist abuse on social media is the new, especially at a time when people can't go to grounds. I think it's becoming this new disease that's really, obviously it's always been there. I'm not pretending it's just happened right now, but it's something that it needs to be. I wish there was a vaccination against stupidity and idiotic beliefs and ways of thinking and talking to other people. I really wish you could get a couple of jabs for that and just get it out there. But yeah, so that was that. Alderweireld, wanted to mention that kind of in a bit more detail. I just can't get my head around that. That would be an interesting one for the Mourinho fans. And if there's any of you watching this ready to sharpen your knives and have at me, just answer that one for me, because I don't understand why at a time when Spurs are struggling for composure in their defence, especially in the centre, they are not playing the most composed, possibly the most composed man on planet Earth in Toby Alderweireld. Whether you can argue whether he's still the defender he once was, there is no one more composed than Toby Alderweireld. Literally his hair will not come out of place in any point of any match. He is laid back and in control of what he's doing the bulk of the time. And I thought Joe Rodon did well. I thought Joe Rodon had another game where you could see real promise. But just for me, it's crucial that he has someone alongside him to guide him and talk to him. And, like I say, just be composed alongside him. I don't think Alderweireld's a leader so much, but I think he's got experience. And I think Rodon will look across at him and think, okay, he's got this. I don't have to come across and try and cover. Eric Dyer came in, and Eric Dyer just did such an Eric Dyer performance in that there were some really fantastic moments. He's got some great ability as a central defender. There was the perfectly timed sliding tackle to stop Rashford early in the first half. There was a brilliant last gasp block to stop Paul Pogba backheeling the ball into the net. But then there's just silly moments. There's moments where he switches off and he's beaten too easy, like for Cavani's disallowed goal. He was turned so quickly and easily for that. The second goal, it was kind of I'm trying to remember the first goal. The second goal, it was mainly the second. The first goal was a parry out, wasn't it, to Fred? I'd say for the second goal, it was more he and Aurier kind of combined to lose Cavani at the back post. Possibly more so Aurier, but Dyer originally had him, and that was all about communication. And then for the third goal, I can't remember who fed Greenwood. Whoever it was just ghosted past Dyer, and he was like clutching at him. And that's the problem with Eric Dyer. He does incredibly good things that really are marking him out for an 8 or 9 out of 10 performance. And he just has sometimes the basic decision making is just not there. And I don't know whether that's something you can coach. Is that something Mourinho should be doing better, or is that just an inbuilt thing in a player, just bad decision making? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I sound like Mourinho now. No, that's not fair. He does have the answer. He just won't tell us. I thought Reguilon had another poor game. Aurier was kept going. What I want to mention, this was really noticeable in the stadium. There were specific orders that I think were different for Reguilon and Aurier, or Aurier was just ignoring them. But there were so many times it was so frustrating that Reguilon would come down the left and then pass the ball sideways, as if almost he had instruction to only a certain amount of times go over the halfway line. And there were other occasions when he would just stop a run and wouldn't go into the opposition half, the United half, which would leave Ndombele or Son, whoever it was, surrounded by red shirts and no one to pass to. That I found incredibly frustrating. But then you had the flip side on the other flank of Aurier going back to old Serge Aurier, where he just would randomly wander up the pitch and not come back. There was one moment which it always reminds me of this moment against Bayern Munich in the 7-2 thrashing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, when Aurier was the furthest man up the field. For a while, he stayed there. And he kind of did that again on Sunday. It was just like, it was so weird. It's such a bad, lazy part of his game where he kind of just thinks, yeah, I'm done. Someone will cover me. And it's, when it's that person is, say, Ndombele, and it's like, you're asking a lot for a guy to suddenly become a right back. So, yeah, that kind of links into my earlier point of, look, Aurier and Reguilon just want to attack. That's their strength. I'd say Reguilon can be a good defender, but he just isn't shown. I think Aurier can be as well when he's really fully concentrating. But I just think for Mourinho maybe now, when you look at the games that come, City aside, just go for it. Just go for it. Let Reguilon get down there and deliver those brilliant crosses we know he can. Let Aurier be a threat. But you have to then perhaps maybe play with two anchormen. Maybe Ndombele has to push forward into a number 10 role, and Sissoko or Winks, someone sits alongside Højbjerg and they have to sit back. Or you play with a back three, I don't know. But as I said again, just go for it. Let's enjoy the end of the season, whatever may come of it. But I think that's the key thing for me right now is there's no identity to this Tottenham Hotspur. You can honestly, I don't know whether you answer me when I answer these questions, whether you say them out loud or you think them in your head. But if you are, tell me right now, what is Tottenham Hotspur's identity right now? They don't have one. I kind of said this in an article and people saying like, oh, what identity have Spurs ever have? And I don't think that's fair. I think under Pochettino, they had a really strong identity, certainly in the prime years, of being aggressive, physical, that relentless pressing that they did, harassing of the opposition, and they played some lovely, expansive, quick football, attacking football. I always bring up the year that Leicester won the title. Spurs played the best football out of anyone that season. They were superb. And probably again, maybe when Chelsea won the title, that team had an identity. It was one of all of the things I just said, but also fun. It was like a family. Like Dele Alli, the scamp, the kind of younger brother, the naughty younger brother. Everyone, there were all the bromances going on. Everyone was enjoying themselves. That was the identity, like a family, off the pitch, and everything I just said on the pitch. That's an identity for me. I'm not talking about an overarching identity of, serial winners, whatever. Only some certain select teams get to have that. But I felt for Spurs, they had a really strong identity. Right now, this team doesn't. It's not got a Tottenham Hotspur identity. It hasn't even got a Jose Mourinho identity. This is not a Jose Mourinho team. You could say that that's because he hasn't been able, it's been whatever it is, 18 months or so now, he hasn't been able to yet imprint his identity on the team, perhaps. Some might argue that's been long enough. He should have. Some might say he hasn't had the players to do so. But, there's been a fair, 9 new players have come in during his time. And as I said before, because his fans will say, well, he hasn't been given the money. His critics will say, why does he always need money? It's a really interesting kind of process. But I think that's the key thing for me. It's got no identity. It's kind of floating and coming down and stumbling through matches. And it's just, there's nothing to latch onto. And I think that's why we've got this disconnect with the fans right now. Because they've got nothing to hold on to. When the Pochettino times, although there wasn't the silverware and that's what you could criticise, people felt part of it all. And you felt you enjoyed it. It was fun to be a Spurs supporter, even if, they still let you down in the big moments. But right now, I think that's the biggest problem. And I think that's why we're seeing this kind of lack of even care about a cup final, is that they don't associate with this team. You know, the last team, you know, in its Pochettino prime, as I keep calling it, sorry for overusing that expression, but it was a young team. Everyone is enjoying themselves, and I think that was quite infectious. Whereas now, and again, before everyone says, oh, you're saying Mourinho's destroying the team, it was happening under Pochettino. It was eroding already under Pochettino. But yeah, it's very difficult. And even as a journalist, you know, it's interesting to report on, but it's not as enjoyable. Of course it's not. It's not. You know, I want to be covering Champions League nights. I want to be covering performances where I can write about the thrilling football on display and the players just loving what they're doing and stuff. And it's not great. It's not great, and it goes across everyone. Some of these players did the same under Poch. They let him down. Mourinho, I think, has got some elements to his confrontational style of management, his tactics, his selection decisions, like with the Alderweireld stuff, that I think is a mistake. And I think Daniel Levy, as I said before, I think is at fault as well, because if you're going to make a decision to bring in a manager who needs to, you know, this is what his followers say, he needs to change everything about the club. He needs to change the mentality and make it a Mourinho club. That's all fair, you know, so it's all very well saying that, but then that's Levy's fault for bringing in someone who wants to do that, but then not providing him with the tools to be able to do that. You know, you don't bring in a manager that you know will want to rip everything up and start again in a way, when you know you can't provide those, the money, the funds, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps, as I said, Mourinho once said at the start, right when he joined, that this is a fantastic... I think he even told Kane, didn't he, in the documentary, I have better players here, I feel, than I had when I came to Man United. So perhaps that's one element. But I still think, you know, Levy has to be held accountable for certain aspects of what's going on as well. Yeah, and I said it earlier, but I really think the fitness is a concern for me. That was one thing about a Pochettino team. I'm sorry, there's some people that hate you talking about Pochettino, which I don't get either. You know, I watched I loved the Bayern Munich PSG match. I thought was superb again. It was another brilliant match. And there's a part of me that, of course, but they're not. Maybe it's slightly different for me. I don't know, because obviously I dealt with the man every week and was always talking to him and stuff. There's a part of me that fair play to him, great for him. If he could, I'd love it if he could go all the way and win the Champions League. It'd be fantastic for him. You know, he's a really good guy, and I think he always wanted the best for Tottenham Hotspur and still does. So, yeah, I don't get this thing where if you want to wish someone well that used to be associated with the club, you're like some kind of scumbag that can't look to the present and future and only looks at the past. I don't get that. Again, I think that comes back to me in this whole, why does everyone just look at this in this tunnel vision of my way is the only way thing. But yeah, what was I talking about? I've actually taken myself off the topic completely. I was talking about fitness. That was where I was going. That was the one thing about the Pochettino time, was that the players were incredibly fit. They hated what it took to get there. They did double sessions. Pre-season was the most horrific thing they'd ever done. You know, Ndombele admitted to me that he wanted to leave after his first pre-season under Poch. His only pre-season under Poch. But it worked. And I think that played a part in the fact that they were stronger at the end of matches, and they conceded less goals at the end of matches. Whereas I always thought Mourinho teams, to be honest, were very much about their fitness. I always thought that was the thing. And I have noticed, especially on Sunday, you watch it, and maybe again, you know, you look at the game in Zagreb, I see a team that looks flat out towards the end of matches. That game against United, if you look at it on paper, Spurs had a full 7 days, their first full week of the entire season, without any interruptions or players away, to concentrate on the game. United only flew back on, I think Solskjaer said it was on the Friday in the end, and he gave them the day off on the Saturday, and on Sunday was when they did their little video analysis work. That was the only preparation they did for the game. Yet on the day itself, United in the last 15 minutes looked like they could play another half hour to an hour of football. Spurs looked like they were absolutely on their feet. That's really poor. Look, I know Spurs have played a lot of games this season, but so has everyone. Yes, Spurs have played a bit more due to the qualifying in the Europa League and everything, but ultimately everyone's had to deal with it. and you're not seeing all the other teams absolutely flat out towards the end of the matches. And that, for me, I think that has to fall on Mourinho. I think that is one that has to fall on Mourinho, because I think he maybe had some difficulties in getting them up to speed because it was a difficult pre-season. But I still think something along the way hasn't been done in the right way, because they should not be tiring. And I think it plays its part. You know, when you're tired, your decision-making and the things you do, you have lapses in concentration. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these late goals. I think that's a big element to it. But yeah, that surprised me. I really, that drilled into my head on Sunday, seeing that, the fitness element. I was really surprised at that. What else did I want to talk about? I was going to touch. You know, I think the key thing to remember, and people disagree with me this, I do think the players are still playing for Mourinho. There's this thing, and again, it may just be people that want him out and all that, and they're seeing what they see as crap performances. I wouldn't really use the word crap. I think they're mixed performances. But what I would say is what I saw on the day, and again, whether it's just different being in the stadium, I saw players busting a gut at times to try and run for him. I saw Ndombele do this like 30, 40 yards sprint into the United half to dispossess a player and start an attack. I saw Reguilon do a few of those. I saw various players. I don't think it's fair to say the players aren't playing for him. If they weren't, you'd soon know, and Spurs would be getting tonked in matches. You know, it'd be like towards the end of the AVB era, and you'd see, and the Sherwood era, when clearly players had just kind of didn't like him, and you were seeing heavy defeats where they completely collapsed. It's not like that. And if that were the case, I think you'd see a very quick decision on the management front as well. There are playing for him, but it's just a case of, as I've said before, getting the balance right between those players who still want to play for him and those players who... sorry, my screen's suddenly really lit brightly up there. Apologies if that jars on you, however you're watching this. But yeah, I feel that it's the balance of the players who he has upset, the players who aren't getting the minutes. And I think for me, a key one is Gareth Bale, in that it's been such a mess of relationship. It's such a weird relationship. It's like Levy's two dream passion projects. You know, Mourinho was the one he chased 20 years, essentially, to get finally to the club. Bale, he's wanted back ever since 2013. He put the clause in the contract that Spurs had the first option till summer of 2019, it was, to bring him back if they could afford it, which we obviously couldn't until now. But just like, it should have been a match made in heaven, is two things he's wanted for ages. And it's kind of been a perfect storm from hell. It just hasn't worked. It's been a real weird pairing together. But what I would say, and again, this goes down to enjoying the football, I don't think I've enjoyed, or Spurs have looked as good as they did during that little month when Bale was absolutely flying. I do feel that he kind of bore the brunt of what happened in the North London derby. He was poor that day, but he was not alone in that. And I kind of feel that since then he's almost been made the victim of that. And I find it a weird paradox that Mourinho won't start him in matches, but then will turn to him in the last couple of minutes to save the day. How does that work? You know, also, you talk about a 31-year-old shoving him on for, it was 8 minutes, I think, on Sunday. It was 2 minutes against Newcastle. How's a 31-year-old supposed to get into his rhythm in a couple of minutes? It doesn't work like that. And I kind of feel like maybe you have to sacrifice something. Maybe it's playing Tanganga, let's say, at right back. I know I said about Aurier bombing on, but maybe the caveat is that you play Tanganga to just sit and then you let Bale just go for it. Because I do feel during that month things started to look up and Spurs fans were engaged again, and Bale was performing, and there was a kind of a sense of, all right, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can get back in the top four. And I kind of feel that ever since he's come out of the team, it's kind of coincided with everything going flat and again. Yeah, obviously there may have been something behind the scenes that we're not aware of, but I just say put him in. Just let him go for it. You know, this probably may well be the last, month and a half we see of Gareth Bale in a Tottenham shirt. Why can't we enjoy it, But there you go. That's just me. I touched on the cup final tickets. I was going to talk about that at the end, but I won't now. Be interesting to see. My belief is that there will still be 2,000 Spurs fans will leap at that, because all the ones that are disgruntled, other Spurs fans will then get the chance to get tickets that they wouldn't have ordinarily been able to get. I'm not going to go too deep into the cup final because we can come to that at a later date. But yeah, I do think it's sad that we've come to a point where something that is so rare for Tottenham, a cup final in recent years, is something that people actually are that kind of apathetic about and just aren't that bothered about. It's so sad. I do understand the frustrations, but I would say I probably would still want to go to a cup final just in case. But I understand why people aren't. And then before I go, I just wanted to kind of do like a little roundup of rumours and links and stuff, which I'm going to try and make a more regular thing. Normally I talk about it throughout, but in this case I'll try and just wrap them up at the end. So what have I seen? Maurizio Sarri, I've seen him linked with Spurs. There's no truth in that, I understand at all. Julian Nagelsmann, of course, we've spoken about before. As I said previously, no secret that he's got admirers at Spurs. And I believe certainly in the past that he's been interested in Spurs. It's been a project that appealed to him. However, we know right now that, especially with Poch's big night, that Bayern Munich is probably going to push them into action, it looks like Flick's going to go to Germany, become the national coach, and that obviously will push on their movement. I mean, Nagelsmann said today that there's been no contact with him or his agent whatsoever. But I think, if Spurs do decide they want to make a change in the summer, which I think is more likely, I think either the summer or, I suppose, after the final, if things are getting away where it looks like nothing's going to happen this season. There's so many ifs, buts and maybes with it. There's the financial side to it. There's if Mourinho can't do it with these players, who can? There's so many elements to it. But with Nagelsmann, I think Bayern will really try for him. I wouldn't be shocked if Bayern have a proper look at Jurgen, like maybe try and make a play for Jurgen Klopp, as weird as it sounds. You never know, especially with he's had a really tough season on and off the pitch. And you do wonder whether Bayern might try and offer him this kind of route back home to Germany. But obviously Nagelsmann is kind of the hot property right now as well. So, it's a tough one. I think just kind of we'll have to see on that one. The Bayern angle is, it's difficult. Any Bundesliga manager, that's kind of like the pinnacle, isn't it, for them in a way. But let's see how that goes. So Sarri definitely a no. Nagelsmann, let's see. I saw Nuno Espirito Santo. That's a strange one for me because obviously Mourinho's got very close links with Jorge Mendes, the agent, and he's the agent of Nuno Espirito Santo. So that was an odd link for me in that respect. And also, it's a funny one. He's had a kind of a mixed season again. I don't know whether it would be met with the most excitement by the Spurs fans possible. I don't know. We'll have to see how that one goes as well. But that one, I must admit, I haven't heard too much on that one. I know he's a manager that Spurs have liked, but whether it's the right time, I don't know on that one. Some player ones, Jerome Boateng, I saw him linked. As far as I understand, that's no interest there for the player. Sometimes you can just look at these from a logical point of view. He's 32 years old. Yes, he'd be a free transfer, but he'd want big money. It's just not a Tottenham transfer profile of signing. They just don't sign players like that, really. I think Bale was probably the exception because of who he was and the connection with the club. But I'm told that there's no interest there at all. There was the young Feyenoord midfielder who I think he plays for Turkey. I want to get his name right. I know I'm going to pronounce it really badly. Orkun Koksu. What a name to be able to mispronounce, eh? I've seen him linked as well. Apparently there's no interest there either. Although he does more fit the profile. I think he's 20 years old, midfielder. But I'm told that that's not a player they're looking for this summer either. Joachim Andersen has been up again in the press. I can definitely say that's a player that Spurs are interested in. I've said this in the past, probably a month ago, I think I maybe first said that one. Certainly a player that ticks all of their boxes for the centre-back type they're looking for in the summer. He's a leader. He's in the transfer age range, he's 25, I think, and he's got Premier League experience. Those are all the three boxes that Spurs really want to tick. So it all depends on what Lyon want for him. Obviously, if Fulham go down, they're not going to be really able to get him again next summer. This summer coming, but it's on what Lyon want for him. But I personally think Spurs will make a move. They'll have a go. He's one of a few they like, but I think he ticks all the boxes. And I think that's it. I think that's all the main rumours that have kind of been out there this week. Yeah, like I said on Mourinho's future, I think it's let's wait and see. Let's see what the final brings. He was brought in to win silverware. That was kind of the crux of it. And if he does that, he could maybe point to that and say, well, that's what you brought me in for. And like I've always said, I think there just needs to be forward momentum. There needs to be an idea that something happening. Right now, it doesn't feel that way. But like I say, and I've probably said this, I think I have said this before, take the shackles off and just go for it. Let's enjoy the rest of the season. There is so much attacking. This is when people say Spurs have got such a lack of quality. No, they haven't. Tottenham Hotspur could have a front three of Harry Kane, Son Heung-min and Gareth Bale. Don't tell me that that's not quality. Tanguy Ndombele is quality. He's got a lot of learning to do and developing, but he's a quality player. Højbjerg can't have gone from being one of the best bargain buyers of the season and one of the best defensive midfielders to suddenly not being good. No, he's a bit knackered. And Gio Lo Celso, yes, he's had some injuries and he's kind of still figuring out now, I think, what his best role is, whether it's deeper or more attacking. He's a very talented player. He will get back to where he was. He's just got to figure out where he is. Lucas has been playing well in recent weeks, getting the assists, getting the stuff. Dele Alli is there. He's not even getting a chance. Eric Lamela I like. In terms of, Sergio Reguilon, what a player. What a fantastic player. I think Joe Rodon's going to be a great talent as well. There's a lot of players, and I've probably missed people that are really, really obvious in there as well. There's a lot of quality in that team. Let's just let it loose and enjoy the rest of the season. And then we'll, in the summer, take stock, decide who you don't want, crack on from there, whether that's the manager, whether that's the players, whatever it is. But yeah, just give the Spurs fans something to enjoy for the rest of the season. That's, I think, how I'm going to end it. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.